I've always known I wanted this to be my career since I was a sophomore year in college.
I wish I knew that.
I was there at sunset. I've never hiked before, and I was just like, this is insane. Like, this is so beautiful.
Do you experience travel burnout at all?
And so I learned so much in my year and a half there. So much.
That's one of my favorite things about Instagram in particular is
How much would you say of your year is brand work travel, like work travel versus personal travel?
Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Adventures. I'm Steven.
and I'm Giselle.
And we are also known as the Lover's Passport. And today we have a very special guest today. It's our first time meeting her. We're really excited to have her on the podcast. So welcome, Sip of Tea.
Woo woo! Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, for those of you guys that don't follow her, she's a sip of tea on Instagram. First of all, I love the name; it is so catchy. And we have been following each other for a long, long time. We were just discussing this; like we've been following her since before I quit my job, so that's at least three and a half years now, and she's been following us for a while too. So, it's great to finally meet in person, and we just want to say, like, you are the queen of the Southeast.
I will say, we've been coaching all these new people in the Creator Passport, and we reference you so often. I hope you know that.
Yeah, no, your content is incredible. You're the queen of the Southeast. You're the queen of influencer marketing. And we'll dive into that in just a second. But I just want you to know, like, you're absolutely killing the game. Like, I can't think of another like Southeast creator that is like, I can't think of another one. You just killing it so hard. But
Thank you.
do you want to?
How long have you been doing the whole content creation thing? So I know that we started in 2020. Were you part of the COVID revolution, as we say, or have you been doing it since before that?
Yeah, I started taking it serious the end of 2019, and then as you know, COVID hit the next year. So I just kept going with it, but COVID definitely spiraled my career and so where it is today.
So it only took you 1 year before you quit your job?
No. So I graduated in 2019 and then I quit my job September of 2022.
Okay. So you had a very similar timeline to
Mhm.
Steven. Yeah. And then how long did you do it? You did it hand in hand with your 9 to 5. So you were doing influencer. Was it influencer marketing in particular? Or were you doing like agency work?
So my first job out of college was marketing. I worked at like a pest control company. I was there for a year and a half. And then I was still pursuing influencing. Like I knew I've always known I wanted this to be my career since I was a sophomore year in college.
I wish I knew that.
Ruby and Jake Stowe was like the first creators I found, and I was like, they're traveling the world. Like, I need to do this. Like, this is going to be my job. And so I told my husband, my now husband, we were, together back then. I was like, when I graduate, we need to go to Southeast Asia because everyone's in Bali, and everyone's in Bali. They're doing
Everyone's in Bali.
So that's what, nothing happened from it.
That's so funny because I remember every day when I would get up, Giselle would sit there and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm just watching Marie and Jake's snow."
No,
story."
literally like the same timeline. Like they were so the 2019 inspiration for all of us. I think that started at that time.
Yes, for sure. And so the COVID shut everything down. I wanted to be a travel influencer when I first started. And so I was like, well, I still love photography. Like I still have a creative like outlet I want to pursue. So I started looking up things to do in Georgia, and one of them was hiking. I went on my first hike and I fell in love. Like I went to this place in Atlanta called Stone Mountain. It's just big granite rock that sticks out of the ground. You climb up. It's a mile round trip. I was there at sunset. I've never hiked before, and I was just like, this is insane. Like this is so beautiful. You could see the city skyline in the background, and I was like, if this is only 30 minutes away from me, there has to be more that exists. Started Googling, found out there's over 700 waterfalls in Georgia. Started posting about it, and then it just started growing. My account just started growing.
I can't believe you've never gone on a hike before. Now that's like one of your things. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
No, that's really cool because I feel like I didn't really get introduced into the hiking scene until later in life too. Mainly because I wanted to, but I never really had anyone to go with, and that I definitely let that hold me back. And then when we started dating, we started going on a lot more hikes because that was like his thing. And I was like, wow, I've been missing so much. I was up in college in Santa Barbara, and there's so much good stuff up in Santa Barbara, and I just like went there for 4 years and did not do any of it. And I was like, man, I wish I had a redo.
It's always fun to visit though, because you do the things that you never would have done in the past. And so it makes it fun to visit.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So the people want to know, it must have been a much easier transition for you than working on the marketing side beforehand. Do you feel like that gave you a big leg up when you were transitioning into becoming a full-time influencer?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's back up the story a little bit. So my first job was marketing. I worked there for a year and a half. And then I was still pursuing influencing. And I was like, I want a career where I can get paid to learn how to do this. So then I started applying for influencer marketing jobs. I landed at an ad agency based out of London. Our clients were like Amazon, Best Buy, Candy Crush, like all these big names. And I was a campaign manager there. So I was over a senior campaign manager. I was over like all of the campaigns to make sure that they ran smoothly. So I had to contract the influencers, negotiate with them, read the contracts, like all of that was part of my task and make sure we hit the numbers. And so I learned so much in my year and a half there, so much. I learned how much influencers are charging across every single niche. I learned how to negotiate. I learned how to read the contracts and what to look for. And so when I left, I felt so prepared to make this my career.
That's honestly so nice. I feel like the same way because I started off doing marketing for a skincare and hair care company, and it was just a small mom and pop. But one of my coworkers had come from an agency where she was doing the same thing. And I feel like I was just a sponge the whole time. But I do feel like that gave us such an advantage when we were first starting because we were able to know what we were doing at like 2,000 followers and pitch and whatnot. Now, obviously, I clearly remember one time you DM'd us and you're like, girl, you guys are charging way too low. You guys could be making so much more money. And that's so stuck out of my head. You were the only person that has like ever actually said that to us. One, because you actually had the background too. But I was like, wait, are we really undercharging? Like, that's crazy. I thought we were getting away with like so much for pricing and whatnot. And now we definitely charge a lot more. We're a lot bigger and we have managers who do it for us, which is nice. But do you feel like that is like a big thing in the current creator space? Like people do not know how much to charge and what their worth is?
It's so big. It's so big. And it's sad, honestly. That was the worst part of that job was seeing how much these creators are getting taken advantage of. Because at that job, I could not accept your rate. Like if I asked you, like, hey, what is your rate for a reel? And let's just throw out a small number, say $500. I cannot accept that. I have to literally like my first task is to under negotiate you. So I have to be like, oh, well, can you accept 350? You know? And so I'll give you an example. So we were working on this campaign and I was looking for people that were pretty big on TikTok. Same amount of following, same amount of views per video. One of them, the rate was $10,000 for TikTok. The other one was 1,500.
Wow, that's a discrepancy.
It's huge. And it's still happening today because there's no set like anything, it's just kind of like, oh, well, you go with the flow, you learn as you go. So yeah, it's still happening today. There's no transparency.
That's wild. And something I love about your page and your blog and everything too is that you're super transparent. I feel like there's definitely a newer wave of transparency, which is nice, but I don't think that was around when we were first starting. Like
Yeah.
we would ask people like, "Oh, how much are you charging for this?" and they'd get all defensive.
Yeah.
So I feel like it before though, at a certain point, people didn't want to share because the people that were doing it didn't want anyone else to know that they could make this money and create more competition. Even now, we were telling some of our other creator friends, like, yeah, we're creating this course. It's called a Creator Passport to help other people like learn how to do this and get paid. And they were like, why would you do that? Why would you teach other people how to do what we do? I was like, bro, the information's already out there. Like, if people want it, there's so much out there. But I feel like in the beginning, it was part of that, as well as on the brand side. I almost feel like they don't want everyone to know that this is the standard, because then the top creators that are getting paid that much, you have everyone else at the bottom who doesn't get paid as much, and the brands can save way more money when they're trying to do big campaigns.
Yeah. And so, yeah, to go off of that, the brand is trying to save money, right? Like any business tries to do. But second, when the gap is so large, it makes it so much harder for you to, as an influencer, for you to fight for your worth and for your pricing. Because I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I'll get reached out to sometimes and I'll be like, well, they'll literally name the influencer like, well, so and so is at this rate and she's going to do even more than what you want to do, right? And so it's like when people accept low prices, it creates this whole industry where everyone thinks that we should be, accepting these low prices for a lot of work.
That is a huge pet peeve of mine. Luckily, that hasn't really happened to us.
Yeah, it's never happened to us personally, but
like,
we've heard about it.
Our housemate, Nikki, for example, she has said that's happened like numerous times to her. And she has a professional photography degree. Like she literally went to school for this. And so she can validate, like higher photo costs than someone with their iPhone. But then they'll be like, oh, well, this person's charging like $50 for a photo, not 500, you know? And it's just wild to see. I hate agencies that do that. And honestly, it's a red flag. Like if you're a brand pitching influencers and you're listening to this, please don't do that. We immediately say no to people that do that. We'll just stop negotiations and say, actually, we don't want to work with you anymore. Luckily, that's never happened. But if that does, that's what we would say.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's very interesting too, in terms of that department, like seeing what solo creators are getting pitched versus couples versus like different niches versus like there's so many different factors too that we found like couples are getting paid about the same as solo, or some solos are getting paid more than couples too. And we don't really increase our rate because we only have one account, but it's just fascinating seeing all the different like avenues that you can go with.
Yeah, and there's so many ways to make money, and like I really don't think anyone's going to judge you for the prices that you choose because it's so up in the air. Like people are just learning as they go. I think like the general rule people do is like I feel like there's been two things in the industry like people say. It's like one, like whatever your rates are right now, double them. Or two, go as high as you can possibly go. It's like called the laugh test. Like say the number in front of the mirror and just keep going. Like let's say you start at 1,000 and then you go to 2,000 and you just keep going until you start laughing because it sounds so ridiculous. That's the number you choose.
I like that. I haven't heard that one actually.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, no. What's nice though, at least, is I feel like it's brands are getting more budget and more attuned to influence marketing now. It's been around for a little bit longer. So I feel like it's at least getting a little bit easier in that department. Do you find being in the Southeast that you're getting a lot of gigs based on your location at all? I'm curious.
Yeah, I do. Being in Atlanta is a huge advantage. It's a huge city. It has the one of the busiest airports in the world. And so a lot of people come through here and to go elsewhere, right? Or live here just to go elsewhere. So a lot of people reach out to me because they want the Atlanta market, which is majority of my audience.
I think that's another thing too that a lot of people don't consider because we get a lot of gigs because we're based in Southern California and we're like super close to Los Angeles. So a lot of people want that like, oh, there's a new flight path from LA to blah blah blah. They just want the California market. So yeah, very interesting to hear about all of this kind of stuff. Do you have a favorite brand collab that you've done?
I love REI. I'm an ambassador for them, so I have to say
Which
put
is
them
so
first.
rad.
But then I just finished a trip with FP Movement, and that was like one of the most incredible trips I've ever been on in my life. It
So
was
that was a
insane.
brand trip.
It was, yeah.
Okay, I was like, did she host a group trip and then three people like sponsored it? I was like, that'd be so rad. But no, that looks so cool.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience and just so grateful for it. Just glad they chose me. I mean, I never know what goes into these selections for the influencers for the press trips, but I'm always excited and happy when I'm chosen.
But how did you select people when you were working on the agency side? Was it
So
just for like metrics?
yes, we were a very metric heavy agency, but I never did a tourism campaign there. We always had like product clients.
Mhm.
But like for instance, like if we worked with Amazon and they wanted us to promote their kids tablets, then I just looked for mommy influencers who had kids in that age range, if that makes sense. So it was always like a straightforward. Usually the brand told us that they want mommy influencers or they want skincare influencers, like they would tell us usually.
Very interesting.
And then when you're going through that, what did you see was like the biggest factor? Like, was it all about the engagement rate and that is like the number one thing that you would look for? Or was it like the performance of content? Was
The
it
follower
beautiful
count?
content? Was it the follower count? Because I feel like that's one thing we get all the time is we have a lot of other creators that will reach out and be like, oh, I have like 1 million followers, but I'm making no money. Or on the opposite, they have 10,000 followers and they're making stupid
Dang.
money because they have really good engagement rate. So is there one thing you think that everyone should try and focus on more than the other?
Yeah, I would say majority of the brands care about engagement rate. At this point, followers is just a number. Like who cares about the followers if you have 1 million followers and no one's engaging? Because at the end of the day, they want to see that you have community. They want to see that your community is invested in you and what you're doing, because that makes your brand image just go further, right? Because they're promoting you. That means they really, really like you, and their community trusts you. So I would say engagement is the main one, and just making sure you reply to the comments. Like when I was looking for like a good fit influencer, if she or him wasn't replying to the comments, I'm like, okay, well, no, if you're not going to even engage with them, then to me, it doesn't seem like you have a tight community.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I feel like when I look at your page, community is one of the words that definitely you embody, but also to your comment, like I can't believe how many people don't actually respond. It's wild to me. Like we have almost do we have 800? Yeah, we have 800,000 followers and we're still responding to comments at least within a 24-hour time frame. Like we will respond to anyone who comments within the first day. After that, since we post every day, it's hard to get back to like everyone. But
Yeah.
we literally hired help to help us get back to all of our DMs, all of our comments, and we're spending hours getting back to it. So if someone with that amount of following can do it, people with less than that should also be able to do it. I think it's so stupid simple, but also a lot of people don't commit to that. They just care about like reaching new people. But anyways, tying into the community aspect, I love how you're always hosting like group hikes and stuff. How did that get started? Like, was that an idea of yours or did you start it with a brand? Like, how did you come up with doing all these hikes around? Do you do all of them in Georgia?
Yes, we might cross over to Tennessee every once in a while, but I would say 95% of the time we're in Georgia.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we definitely want to start doing something like that in LA. We're just never home. So, what would you say is your favorite part about doing all of your group hikes?
My favorite part is one, well, I have two. One is seeing their reaction when I see the view or the waterfall. And then two is when people get each other's numbers. Like that's the point. Like I want you to meet other people who love the outdoors just as much as you do. And that way you can meet up with them and do this outside of my group hikes. So I love that part of it. And I got started doing group hikes. It was never my idea. It was just my audience. They were like, hey, I want to go here too. Can you do a group hike? I don't want to go alone. There's a lot of women who are reaching out. Like, I love what you're doing. This looks beautiful, but I don't want to go alone. And so they asked me constantly to do a group hike. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll do a group hike. And I had like 15,000 followers at the time. And we had a great turnout. And then I've just been doing it every other month since.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that value of community. And I feel like that's one of my favorite things about Instagram in particular is meeting up with people in real life. We've done one meetup in Santa Barbara and we had like 40 or 50 people show up. And I was honestly shook that even that many people showed up, but people were driving like hours, like 10 hours to just come. And I was like, wow, that is amazing that people are so committed to like go out and put themselves out there and try new things and meet other people that are super like-minded, which is why we host a ton of, or now we're hosting a ton of group trips. That's always been super fun. But I can imagine like, especially if you've never gone hiking before, it's super intimidating to go alone.
For sure. And I've had people like drive from New Orleans to Atlanta, which is like an 8-hour drive. I had people fly from Detroit to come here.
Wow.
Like they'll wake up at 4 a.m. and drive from South Carolina to come to my group hikes. And it blows my mind every time. I'm like, you came for this? Like you came for this? Like I'm just like, wait, what? You're not going to the city afterwards? Like, no, I'm going back home. I'm like, wow, like I am just like shook, you know? But it's incredible. And like the whole goal is hopefully they find someone that they like enjoy on the hike that they can also meet up with afterwards.
That's a testament to your influence right there. Cause I mean, that's like pretty rad that people are doing that. They're literally hopping on a plane to come and hike with you. That's insane.
It
So
was
much
insane.
fun. What's been the biggest turnout that you've had out of all these events? Have you done like ones where you're trying to get it really big, or is it always just like a newsletter type thing, or how do you go about it?
I definitely try to keep mine small. I would say I cap around 30.
Okay, cool.
Just so it's not like too disturbing on the trails, because when we pass people, we always try to get on the side, but we don't want to make people wait too long, trying to sit past them.
Yeah.
And then parking is an issue here. I don't know how it is in California, but all the best hikes, they got 6 spots. So
Really? Wow.
a lot of them have like limited parking, like maybe 12 spots or something like that. So I do try to cap it. But I do want to do like a cookout or something this year where I can, have like 100 people or something.
That'd be awesome.
Honestly, I'm shook by that parking lot thing. I feel like most of our hikes have a pretty good sized parking lot. It's like the ones that get exposed on TikTok that, of course, are the ones that have like 5 parking spots in the middle of a neighborhood and then everyone ends up illegally parking and getting towed. That's it's always the ones that people are posting for clout on.
Yeah.
On TikTok that can't handle it. We've had a ton of like hot springs near us blow up and then just like, oh, that's a bummer. Got trashed. So that's a hot topic though.
And I feel like you do 90% of the stuff that I see from you, all like Georgia based stuff, obviously. One of the biggest questions we get from other creators a lot, since we were heavily California, that's all we did for like 16 months basically. And then we built in Iceland and we slowly started building it out. What would be like your biggest piece of advice if someone was trying to expand a little bit besides just doing one specific area? Have you ever thought about exploring more and doing like more of the South or more of the East Coast?
Well, I feel like you do a great job of doing Georgia and like the East Coast, but like going internet, would you want to do more international stuff too? I feel like that's multiple questions, but feel free to answer whatever order you want.
I'm leaving for Peru on Monday, so definitely want to like post that and start sharing that content. But for someone looking to grow, my advice is to stick to that niche until you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm where I want to be, or you just feel comfortable in it, and then start trickling it in here and there. Like I'm working on, switching up my content. I'm adding in more like fashion pieces and like get ready with me's. But I'm
Which
just
I
like,
love, by the way.
but just sprinkling it in. So on the FP movement trip, I was talking to the other influencers, and majority of them, or a few of them, were lifestyle, and then they were saying how like they start off in like one aspect of lifestyle and they wanted to add in like maybe it was fashion and they wanted to add in beauty. Of course their content like tanked at first, but they just kept doing it and then now it's their biggest like revenue generator. So you just have to let it tank, keep working towards it, keep trickling it in until it just becomes part of who you are and what your content is.
Love that.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I feel like that's super interesting because I never really thought about it back when we were like just going gung ho and like, all right, now we're gonna show Washington, now we're gonna go Switzerland, now we're gonna show Iceland. I feel like it very easily integrated in with it, but I feel
Only
like we
because of
get that
COVID. I feel like when we
maybe.
started COVID, like we had to be only California because we couldn't go anywhere else. And then
Mhm.
as the world started slowly opening more, so did our content. So it kind of went hand in hand, but now it's like COVID's not really a thing. So, or not really as big of a thing where you're getting locked down to certain places. So I feel like that was one advantage of starting when we did is we didn't really have to worry about niching so hard and then branching out because like the rest of the world was also able to branch out more and more at the same time we were. But now I totally think that that is the best piece of advice that you can do is just niche hard and then branch out later. But you're going
Yeah.
to Peru. That's so exciting.
Thank you. It's a group trip.
Are you're hosting it or is it someone else's?
Yeah, I'm hosting it.
And is this your first international one?
No, I did Costa Rica with Travel Trip last year.
Okay, cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're excited. We're hosting our first international one in Iceland later this year. So very excited. At least with Trovo. We did a group cruise last year, but it's very different doing a cruise than like an adventure hiking kind of trip, I feel like.
Very true. What's the like spot at the top of your bucket list right now if you were planning international travel or in the stateside travel?
Stateside, probably like Montana or Idaho. And then internationally, probably Patagonia.
Oh, we've been trying to get to Patagonia for the past 2 years. Then every time something just happens. We were going to do a Trova trip there actually like 2 years ago. We got like 8 people booked. And then we were looking at flights and it was going to be somewhere around $3,000 per person to go. And so we're like, no, these people are already paying so much money to go on the group trip. There's no way we can ask them to like pay for these flights. So then we ended up canceling it. And then last year we had flights. I got an insane flight drop because I'm super into all the like points and miles stuff. And so I had a crazy miles deal to Santiago and then I could just buy like a little commuter flight down. But then I just got really burnt out from traveling the rest of the year. So we were going to go in November and I was like, no, I want to enjoy it and not feel like I have to be there instead of wanting to be there, if that makes sense. I don't know. Do you experience travel burnout at all?
What, girl? Yes.
Okay, yeah. We don't. Well, what's funny
Oh,
is like everyone talks about work burnout, but not like travel burnout, and that's such a privilege to talk about. Like, oh, hard life, we travel so much, but it's really a thing.
oh yeah. It was when we first started, like once my husband Justin, when he left his job, we were like, okay, great. We have all this time now because we usually had to do things on the weekends. Because that's when he would be able to, because he couldn't really work from home. That's when he'd be able to help me shoot my content. And so we were like, cool. So we'll do this trip Monday through Thursday. And the next trip will start on Friday and we'll be gone until Monday. And the next trip will start on Tuesday. And like we would back it up like that, like so insane. Like it was like 2 months last year like that. And we were like, never again. We could not even like the amount of stress we felt, like it just was insane.
Yeah. And so I feel like every October is like that because for some reason, fall colors and just October is the time. Like the past 2 years, every single day in October, we have been gone, which is crazy. That's why Steven ended up having to quit actually, because in 2022, he owns his own martial arts businesses. So it's like fine now that he's not there, he still owns it. But we literally had brand like tourism trips every single day in October.
Nonstop, yeah.
And I also feel like it's one thing too, if you're doing personal travel back to back, but if you're doing brand trips back to back, it's another extra layer. It's like, wow, you're just not stop working.
I don't think people realize the amount of work that goes into it because I know you guys shoot sunrise and sunset. And so I asked the brands to give me that itinerary so I can get the best content. So sunrise to sunset, you're out shooting all day. And like we love food. So we're also getting like the food content and stuff. And then you just aren't able to get any work done. I think that's the most stressful part is like at the same time while I'm here for a week, I'm getting a bunch of emails that I have to get back to, and I have to turn in content for other campaigns, and so things are due, but you literally have no time. So the only time you have is when you get back to your room at like 11 p.m. to work, and then you have to wake up again in 5 hours to sunset.
That is
Sunrise.
exactly what happens. Yeah, when we were in Mallorca, 2 weeks ago, we had just come off a course launch. Like literally, we finished the launch on the plane, which was in retrospect a terrible idea, but we didn't know we were going to be on a plane. And then immediately jumped into a hotel gig for 5 days. And then we're out driving around the island for just like hours. And then we're backlogged with all of our content, and you're on a different time zone. So then you have to do all your meetings at like midnight or 1 a.m. And I just don't think like people that don't do content creation for travel ever will understand, because it's just such a weird lifestyle that we live.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge privilege, but at the same time, it is.
It's
I'm
work.
working way more hours than I worked at my 9 to 5, and I worked a lot because I was an ad agency. I worked like 60 to 70 hours, but I'm working way more now.
I
Oh
hope you
my
got
gosh.
overtime or something. That's wild. No? Okay, I will say at least my boss, when I was doing my 9 to 5, she was so strict on it's 4 o'clock, get out of here. Do not spend an extra minute over here, like go home. She at least had like pretty hard boundaries, but that's crazy.
It was a lot of work. I mean, I would usually have anywhere from like 5 to 6 campaigns at a time, like different clients for each one. So it was a lot of work.
That's crazy. Out of all of your clients, do you think, because at least on our end, we understand like some creators are crazy, some ad agencies or clients are crazy. Well, on which side do you think there was more pushback with like creators reaching out and being the pain to work with, or clients needing like such
So
strict deliverables and being so strict about the type of content? Which side do you think was more difficult to handle?
that's a good
Probably because
question.
I was brand side, probably the client side, because that was obviously our priority because that was our client. And so because that was our priority, like we had to do a lot of the things that they requested and just like, made sure that their needs were met. And some of them could be picky, as you know, like make sure that when you put your hashtags on, everything's capitalized or like just things like that. So I would say the brand side majority of the time.
No, I feel like seeing both sides of it, at least when I was working in the influencer marketing brand side space, I was working primarily with beauty and like skin influencers, as we say. And it was just fascinating to see the characteristics of creators in that niche, because there were some that were like totally good, totally normal. Some people that wouldn't respond for weeks, that had gotten product and just like never fulfilled their requirements. Some people that would like post, but in a literally didn't even look at the brief that they signed kind of thing. So it was fast, because I'm like, in my head, you respond within 24 hours, like you try and be as professional as possible, you execute everything on the brand deal, like, or creative brief, whatever you want to call it. And so I was just flabbergasted that people did not do that. I was like, creators out here not taking advantage of this? I don't.
Yeah, it's crazy. When you are doing all of this, are you like a one woman team? Does your husband help you with any of this? Do you have a manager, an assistant? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, so my husband quit his job last year, February. So he's
Okay.
been full-time for a year, and then we just recently got an assistant. So she's working with us for almost 2 months.
How has that been?
It's been good. I think we're still like learning the ropes with each other. She's a virtual assistant, so she doesn't like come in or anything. But it's been helpful, like just having her get the work done, especially when we do travel for like, weeks on end.
I think outsourcing has been one of the best things that we've ever done for our business. So I'm stoked for you. Like literally, it just frees up so much time from menial tasks that you don't want to do and lets you focus on like creating and stuff and
Yeah.
your group events. And it's just so much nicer being able to have a team with you. So nice that you get to do it with your husband now too. How has that been working with your partner? Because it's very different.
It is. I mean, when I first started this, we would like go out on the weekends and do 5 hikes in one day because that's like the only time I had to shoot content, like organic content and paid content. And so he's been in this with me since the beginning, and so it just felt like more of like a natural like transition when he left his job. Because I mean, he was about ready to leave. He was commuting an hour there and an hour and a
Oh,
half
Oh
back.
that sucks.
man.
Yeah, it was bad. And then the reason why he had to quit too was because he's out of PTO. Like like mid-February, he's out of PTO. 2 weeks was gone. I was like,
You can
well,
only stretch it so far. Anytime I see those reels where it's like how to stretch out like your PTO this year, I'm like genius, but also like I feel like they're still gonna run out kind of thing. Like I only got 5 days of PTO at my old job. As a travel
What?
creator, that was so hard. Yeah. Luckily, I mean, we were good at doing the sunrise to sunset Friday to Sunday, but that nearly killed me. I was exhausted when we were doing
Oh,
that. And it's like I enjoyed that kind of stuff. Like the 5 hikes in one day, been there, done that. Like that was us too. The weekend warrior lifestyle is one thing, but then you add also building a content creation business on that, and you're like, wow, this is a lot.
Yeah, crazy.
but I think it's been great. I mean, he is more of like the logistical person, and I'm more like the creative, like, figuring things out. So he does like a lot of the admin work, like emails and contracts. I tell him, read the contracts and everything. So it helps a lot.
I was gonna say, and anytime I see a big creator not have a manager, I'm always curious. Like, is there a reason you haven't decided to go the manager route because you have this whole background in the agency, so you feel like you don't need it, or what? Have you ever thought about going that way with the pros and cons?
It took me a long time to get like over the manager stigma because I was like, no, I used to do this for a living. Like, I don't need one.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was originally my mindset. Like, I don't need one, I know how to do it all. But at the same time, like, we're trying to expand. And it's something that's been on my mind more recently. I do know that just from experience working in my last job, I will not, like, I have to be CC'd on my emails. Like, I I worked with so many agents at that last job, like, negotiating with them for their influence and things like that. And they lost their influencers so many contracts because they would not respond. I'm talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of money. Like, these influencers
Wild.
lost their agent, just was not good at their job. And so because of that, I have like a little bit of like trust issues when it comes to working with an agent. So that's been holding me back a lot. But it has to be a good fit, and then they have to know what they're doing. They have to understand the outdoor space or be willing to learn about it. But I am considering it probably like end of this year or early next year if it is something that we want to do.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel like talking to all of our friends that also have management, they have said the same thing. It's like when we first started too, because we're not CC'd on ours for the most part, unless they were like a existing client of ours when we first brought them in. It was scary. It's like so scary letting go of that. I was like, what if they don't respond? What if they don't do that? And some managers are terrible. Luckily, we got really good ones, so we don't have to worry about it. But oh man, like that first like outsourcing part, but we were getting married and we were buying a house and like all this stuff last year. There was no way we were going to be able to stay on top of our emails while traveling and doing all of that stuff. So that's the only reason we ended up getting ours. But
yeah.
that's definitely reasons to, I have trust issues in that department too. I get
And then
that.
when you're doing all this, I know that you said you started hiking, doing the traveling more recently, but do you feel like another big question we get all the time is, does it take away from what you were already doing? Like if you already love going to these waterfall hikes and already love exploring and traveling with your husband, do you feel like doing all this content creation or having to do a brand shoot and having to worry about, is it good weather, is it bad weather, like, and all of these other things that go into it? Do you feel like that's taken away or helped it, or what do you think?
Taking away like my enjoyment of it.
Yes.
No, I still love it. I still love it. But I will say that I feel kind of bored with my content. Like I feel like it's very much like, this is what works. This is how this is gonna look. So I was telling my husband, like, I was like, I want a different creative outlet because at first it was such a creative outlet for me, and I was just doing everything for fun, and it's still fun, but at the same time it's work, like I
Yep.
enjoy
Yeah.
what I love it, but I want something else that's like, this is just for fun. And so I'm starting a YouTube channel.
There you
And
go.
That's fun.
it's been super fun. And I've shot 4 vlogs now and just got to edit them. But for me, it's like this is just a fun outlet. So I feel like if you ever get in that space where it's like you're doing what you love, but it's also work, and you're just like trying to find that balance, then you just need to create a new creative outlet. So that way you have that balance in your life.
That's kind of what our podcast is, honestly. This is the only platform we don't monetize, and we can just like chat and have fun without
Mhm.
any pressure whatsoever. So that's why we started this like what, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is season 3 already, which is crazy. But yeah, YouTube for us too. I mean, it's our smallest platform. We have about 30,000 subscribers on there, but we love making YouTube videos. Like I feel like it's super fun. We don't actually edit them, but we love making them. So even better because we don't have to worry about that. But I still do all like the SEO background, of course. But no, that's awesome that you're getting started over there. I feel like when I still feel like Instagram stuff is a ton of work. I don't think it takes away from the enjoyment of like going outdoors and traveling, but I think what we've said in the past is it makes us much more intentional. Like we're very like not selective, but we're choosing to get up at sunrise and go until sunset, which maybe necessarily if we weren't shooting things, we wouldn't be getting up for sunrise every day. And then we would never see these beautiful things. So
Yeah, spend a lot more time researching before we go to an area. So it teaches us a lot more about it. I feel like it's changed my view of travel a lot. Where, like she said, that's our word that we always say is it makes us more intentional about it. But one of the first things that we tell everyone when we're coaching them in the creator passport is exactly what you said. Like, you need another hobby. Like, if this is your hobby and you're trying to monetize it, that's amazing. You need to find something else to like make it so it's not work, because eventually it does start to
it does
weigh
weigh on you.
Mhm.
I took up knitting in December.
Oh,
I've been so bad because I haven't done it at all this month, but it was fun to get like another artsy creative hobby. I was like, I'm going to make a sweater by the end of the year, my old person hobby.
need something that's going to fill your cup because everything else is taking out of it. And so you need something that you truly enjoy, it makes you happy. And then, it's so much easier to go about getting things done.
Totally.
That's great advice.
Do you have a favorite place that you've ever traveled out of everywhere, whether it's in like so far leading up to this point that you're like, wow, that was the most beautiful place I've ever been?
The Dolomites in Italy.
Oh, we
Okay.
still haven't been. And I'm so sad because we were in Venice last year and we were like, should we just go? We're right here. But I've also never been to Italy before that. So I was like, no, we can just explore Venice for now. But I want to get there so bad. Ugh.
And then
It was
my follow up to that is what do you and your husband look for when you guys are traveling? Like, someone asked us that, and I was like, that is a great question. I feel like it made us really sit there and think about how do you decide on your next location, or where do you want to go?
what do we look for when we're traveling? I always look for hikes because it's like I love it. And I look for unique stays, like glamping sites or like cute cabins. I'm all about the aesthetics. Like I love a cute kitchen, like somewhere to like, just enjoy where we're at. I would say like and good food. Like that's number one too. Good food.
But it is
Makes
it's a must.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But I love all of your cabin stuff, all of your like cute accommodation content. I feel like you slay that niche. Like I genuinely don't know like too many creators in that area that do it as well as you. We just had I don't know if you follow Susie on the Move. Susie,
Yeah.
yeah, Susie's another person who I think of with like really good accommodations content. But I always love consuming all that kind of stuff. But that's definitely something that's on the back burner for us when we're planning our travels. Like I look at like outdoors hikes, like beautiful views kind of thing, and food for sure. But I feel like accommodation for me is like last.
Totally agree.
But we don't post a lot about that. So
It's actually pretty big in the Southeast. So my friends, Sunshine with Soul, at Sunshine with Soul, and then at Madeline on the Move, we're the Southeast girlies. So I'm Georgia, Maddie's North Carolina, and then Sunshine is Virginia. They also do a really good job at destination stays too.
I've definitely seen Madeline stuff. I'll have to check out Sunshine's because yeah, we're starting to plan our giant 50 states road trip, which we've done, I think 27 of the states. So we had 23 more to go, and most of them are South or East Coast. So we'll be looking at your blog. Actually, I've already looked at your blog, but all of their stuff too, because I think the next couple ones we're planning on doing are like the Carolinas and Tennessee and that whole area. And I saw you had a ton of good stuff. So if you guys are planning a future trip out to the Southeast area or the East Coast, definitely go check out T's blog. She's got some good stuff.
You're gonna have a great time, especially if you hit up the Blue Ridge Parkway. Like there's so many crazy hikes on that. Oh my goodness.
I'm like so torn because we're planning on doing it in summertime, which is still great for hiking, but I know everyone loves going there for fall colors too. So I'm like, ooh, which time do we go? Because I've heard great things about both times.
I will say that we have a ton of swimming holes. So if you wanted to get in the water a lot, I would do summer.
Summer.
If you
Okay.
don't do that, then go fall.
That's good to know.
I like swimming holes. That was actually when we did visit South Dakota a while ago. I think that was in 2021 or 2022. That was one of my favorite tourism trips. Like spontaneously, I didn't know that they had all these like rivers and swimming holes over near Badlands. And that was like such a fun little day. They had a ton of waterfalls and just like natural rock slides and stuff. And that was like a fun surprise, I guess. There's a lot of really awesome things in all these middle of nowhere states, you know?
Yeah, there is. You just gotta know where to look.
Yeah, and all your stuff from Georgia, I was like, wow, I really would not have thought Georgia looked like that. It's which is funny because we go to all these states like Virginia, West Virginia, and like Michigan, and we always find all these incredible things. So I know every state has got to have something rad, but then
Yeah.
sometimes you just get that stereotype in your head of like, oh, what's there to do in like Mississippi.
I think
I
that's
don't
just
know.
our West Coast speaking, because I feel like everyone on the West Coast only focuses on Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. Like no one is ever like, oh my gosh, you're going to the East Coast. I feel like it's a
Yeah,
and
just
I feel
Georgia's at the top of my bucket list.
I feel like that's because on Instagram and all these places, a lot of the big photography bros were just focusing on the mountains of Washington, Oregon, and Colorado. But I really think in the next few years, I've started to see a lot of East Coast and South creators just blow up because there is so much out there. And I didn't realize that like 80% of the population of the US lives on the East Coast when you're looking at it from like a map and how many people, where everyone is. So that absolutely blew my mind.
That's insane. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forget which TikTok we saw, but it was like after
Yeah, that's like
Colorado, 80% are on that side. And the Midwest is just even more scarce. It's like
no one. Yeah.
10% of the population. I don't know. It's super small. But anyways, do you have any other questions to round
Yeah,
out?
we have one question. This is my first question I ever asked Giselle when I first met her. So, and we love asking it because everyone has such different answers. So, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? Everyone is, or the most exciting thing you've ever done?
Oh my goodness, I have to think. Wow.
There's a lot of different routes you can take with it, which is why he likes asking. We've had people say like a crazy party or like eating scorpions and like somewhere in Asia, hiking a volcano, like all over the place.
We've had so many crazy adventures. It's like hard to put something at the top. Let me see. It's like, when someone asks you a question like that, your mind just goes blank.
It's like the where's your favorite place you've ever traveled to? Anytime we get asked that, I'm like, well, it depends. Like, are you looking at tropical or outdoors? Like, there's so many different things to consider.
I will say like the craziest thing was this hike in the Dolomites. I was with Maddie, and it was one of those trips where she planned it and I just tagged along. Like I didn't know where we're going and what we were doing. And so we were on this hike and we've seen like some other influencers, take a photo at this one spot. Like this is the spot you have to take the photo. But I did not realize in order to get there, you had to climb along this ledge that was like super skinny, like 1 foot in front of the other. And then if you fall, you're gonna die. So
It's just so casual.
bridge to get that photo was probably the scariest and craziest thing I've ever done.
Honestly, there's been a ton of situations like that. I feel like we'll show up at a spot that has been heavily photographed by our peers, and we're like, what the hell? Why did they post this? Like, this is a death trap. Like that one spot in Utah that everyone goes, like in Hanksville, you know what I'm talking about?
The
Like
one
the
that's
offer,
like the
like
moon.
yeah,
I
the
don't think that was
moon
that
area.
sketchy. I think it's
I
like
thought it was so scary. I mean, we do a lot of backpacking, mountaineering, and we don't post about it as much because it doesn't perform as well. Sigh. But when we do a ton of that stuff, like at least my fear of heights has kind of like gone away. Like I'm fine jumping out of things. I can do bungee jumping, hang gliding, canyon swinging, you name it. But I've got this really particular fear. And I think Renee Roaming also mentioned that this was a fear of hers, was like the fear of something falling off beneath your feet, like rocks falling and you falling because of the rocks, or like a ledge not being like safe or whatever. And I feel like that is where I experienced that in Utah. And then there's this one shot in Yosemite. If you might have seen it, like that catwalk with Glacier Point in the background.
Mhm.
It's like really sus, like so crazy. I don't know why people go out there.
The wedding photos, the wedding photos are taken. It's like the couple on the edge, that one.
yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also, I mean, we've gone out to that. There's like two different views of that. So there's one that I'm comfortable with, and then there's one that I'm very not comfortable with. And then there's one over at Glacier Point, because that one's at Taft Point. The one at
Okay.
Glacier is like, we took a photo on it like years ago. We got 5 frames and I had a panic attack and I had to get off. I like literally, I've never had a panic attack in my life until I was standing on that ledge and I was like, absolutely not. Like I felt like I was gonna poop my pants and I ran off and I was like crying. So I was like, never again. And I think they've closed it off now. I'm not 100% positive, but yeah, that stuff freaks me out. So good to know, because we have not done the Dolomites yet, that I'm probably gonna have to mentally prepare.
I can't remember if it was the Dolomites or it was a three-country trip. So we did Switzerland, the Dolomites, and then Austria. It might have been Switzerland. I can't remember, but I can see
Switzerland
the
does
picture.
have some sus ones too. Did
Oh,
you like Austria? Because that's pretty high up on our list too.
Loved it. I
Okay.
loved it. It was so stunning.
Yeah, we
Love.
loved Switzerland, but
need to do more of Italy and more of Austria.
I feel the same. I want to go back.
That's always the struggle. I feel like it's hard figuring out for us where to go because we all, anytime we open up our Instagram, there's like a new spot, and I'm like, this looks insane. Like, I want to go there, but the bucket list is already so long. I feel like once you get the travel bug, it's like
It doesn't stop.
you just keep going. There's
But
always
then
the next location.
But then you like go to a place and you're like, oh, I just found out this really cool place and I don't have time for it. So I need to go back.
Mhm.
I feel like that was Switzerland. Or like we had bad weather for a couple of days we were in Switzerland. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to do this hike, but now I have to go back because we got rained out. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is not a bad thing, you know?
I have a question for you guys.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
how much would you say of your year is brand work travel, like work travel versus personal travel?
That's a good question.
I feel like
So
this year is a little different so far because we've transitioned a lot more from like tourism boards because it's a little bit more difficult for them to afford us, and we've been doing more just specific brand work. Before we would do a lot more trips for brands. Like if you asked us last year, I feel like it'd be like 70-30. But so far this year, I feel like
it's
it's
been
been
mostly personal,
yeah,
actually.
like probably 80-20 for personal travel versus brand travel.
I think it also depends what time of year because every
Very true.
January to March, we do a ton of personal travel because it's the slow season for travel tourism brands, at least in our
Mhm.
experience. Like every year, January to March is pretty slow. So we're like, okay, we're going to go. Like in January, we did New Zealand, which is a personal trip. In February, what did we do in February?
In February of
hmm
this year,
I don't remember.
we were in no, Norway was March, February. I don't think we did much.
Oh, we went to New Mexico, I think. That was oh yeah, it's been all personal trips. And then last or this month was our first like actual brand trip that we had to travel for in Mallorca. But that was it. Like we're honestly, I think we've come to the point of as much as we love doing tours and boards and they're our favorite clients to do, it also takes away our time from like doing something else. So like I would
Mhm.
rather almost at some point travel, pay for it, and then like maybe sell the content after as like a UGC video. Or a lot of the times now that we've been working with brands like New Zealand, for example, was a personal trip. And then Travel New Zealand reached out after we had come back and wanted to license a ton of content. So I've actually noticed a lot moving into that kind of space. Like they don't want to pay for the creators travel. So they're just reaching out to people who've already like airlines do this all the time with us, where they're like, hey, we saw you flew on Delta. Like we want you to create a Delta reel. And then they'll license it after the fact so they don't have to do the overhead cost of sending us all the way out there. I think it's a transforming landscape. I think also tourism boards are getting more and more competitive. And as we continue to grow, they just don't think they can afford us. We were having this conversation with a marketing guy from one of the hotels we work with on a like consistent basis. And he was like, yeah, if I see they have over like 600K, I won't even reach out because I know we can't afford them. And I was like, oh, no, like please reach out. Like I want you to reach out kind of thing. So I think it's, yeah, it just really depends. This year we don't have too much in the first half, but then once we get going, we already have a couple of tourism boards locked for the summertime. I think summer
Mhm.
and fall are just our biggest like crazy stuff. And that's when most of it is brand travel. Do you feel like
Yeah,
the same way with you guys?
no, we are probably 90% travel work. I don't even know, honestly. I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't even know when we take personal. Like when I say personal, I mean like Justin and I want to go to this place, so let's book it because like we have like a personal trip to Louisiana, but it's for graduation. You know, like nothing's like let's just go explore. It's always
Yeah.
like, oh, we have to go here for a wedding. We have to go here for an event versus like we're going here just because we want to. And so I honestly can't even like I don't even know if we do a lot of personal travel because we get so much tourism work.
Yeah. And it's hard to say no to the tourism gigs too, because we're like, oh, let's just squeeze it in our schedule. We can make it work. But I think for me, the reason why we started doing a little bit more personal travel is one, because I was getting burnt out from
Mhm.
just doing like brand travel and I wanted to actually like go to places I really had at the top of my bucket list. Not saying that those tourism boards weren't on my bucket list, but for example, like going to Bora Bora and like our honeymoon that we did, that was like so refreshing. Obviously it was a honeymoon, but like doing that or like our Northern Lights road trip that we just did in March, that was like a bucket list thing to go see the aurora and chase the aurora. And like we still managed to get it like sponsored almost because we were working with an eSIM company. And so it was very easy. Like it wasn't really, we weren't really shooting while we were there, but it like paid for the trip, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
feel like that's more of what I was saying. We've transitioned to working a lot more brands compared to just like tourism based stuff this year.
but they like cover, like, we'll either bring it on the trip or like it's just something easy we can shoot at home. And I feel like too, that also switched from when we were just pitching ourselves, we kind of had that limiting like mindset of, oh, we can only work with travel brands and outdoor brands. And our managers were able to get us like a ton of different verticals that we wouldn't necessarily have pitched ourselves. I think that's also helped with doing a lot more personal travel.
Yeah, that's definitely what I want to transition to. Like my bucket list is so long, I just feel like I can never touch it because like I'm booked out till July right now and it's just insane. And it's like I
That's
want to
good
go,
though.
yeah, it's amazing for sure. But I want to go places that are on that bucket list, and start knocking some things off. But
Mhm.
it's really good to hear that you are getting work on the back end. That's happened to us once when we went to Costa Rica for a group trip, and they reached out to us afterwards for the content.
I definitely recommend like pitching after the fact. We've gotten quite a few gigs and like additional clients. Like we'll work with a tourism board. They have like 1 or 2 sponsored posts going up. And then after we always upsell and we say, hey, we have a ton more content that we took that never even made it into this. Would you be interested in licensing any of this? We'll send over either an edited gallery that they can make selects from with watermarks and stuff, and they can't download it. And then they can license those photos. Or Steven will send over cold, like tiny clips, like iPhone clips or whatever. And then they can select after the fact, or they can make full UGC reels after the fact. And we've gotten a ton of money. Like we've doubled some of our brand gigs from doing that.
Smart. I love that.
Yeah. So definitely recommend. If you already have the content, you might as well get paid for it.
And it'll give me more leverage to convince my husband let's travel more because we
There we
travel.
go. We'll chat with them, put him on the podcast.
Yeah, whenever we're home, we call it vacation. That's
Yeah.
like
It's the opposite. The vacation for a travel caterer is being home. Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Where can everyone find you? Our TikTok, Instagram, the new YouTube,
The
and
blog.
the blog. Is there any other platforms?
No, we named them all. I'm at underscore a sip of tea underscore on all of those.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for hopping on here. I'm really glad that we got to chat. If you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to go and send her a DM or go follow her. We absolutely love all of her content. You can even see some of her new Peru content that will be coming out. And as always, the best way that you can help support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. And with that, we'll see you out there on the next episode every Friday.